The Brooklyn Nets were faced with the task of digging themselves out of an 0-2 oops-a-daisy. It'll be an 0-3 hole as the Nets basically don't show up once again. We're going to break down it from a high level on the superstars, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, the adjustments that were or should have been made throughout this game, and how, if at all, Brooklyn Nets fans can expect this team to turn it around heading into game number 4. It all comes up right after the theme music.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brooklyn, yo.
All right, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, for better or worse, the Brooklyn Nets every single day. I am Adam Armbrecht, covering the New York Football Giants over on the One Giant podcast with my boy Andy Mack. Over there, you're going to find Doug Norrie, owner-operator DFSR, for all your daily fantasy sports rankings, DraftKings, FanDuel. He's got you covered. We, of course, thank you for making us your first listen free on all those great platforms. And let you know today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, it's where the game starts. And Doug, where we start, man, is for me from the scene of the crime, right from the sofa where you and I sat side by side and watched that glory unfold on Saturday night. Not what we anticipated, man. I don't know where your expectations were. I do, as far as the series overall, but we both agreed going in. And I said it to you in our pregame live coverage on YouTube. Well, they got to be at least good for one, right? The superstars got to be good for one, and you got none of it.
Yeah, it's just a really disappointing series overall. I don't know. You can hear it on our voice here. I mean, we're a day removed. It doesn't feel any better, honestly. Feels like even more of a mess for reasons that we'll get to later on in the podcast. But to go down 0-3 in the series and really show almost no signs of life. We'll talk about some like lack of adjustments. There's just and what specific adjustments those would be. But the Celtics have just had their number from the very beginning. They have stayed true to the game plan that they wanted to employ, which was to make things incredibly difficult on Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. That has not changed. It looked even harder in game 3. So, and for whatever reason, and this is where they are, and they're on the brink here. It's hard to imagine this is anything but the end of the line. I know there's one more game left to go. No team has ever come back from a 3-0 series lead or deficit. And it's just looking at this Nets team, look, stranger things and all, but they're not breeding, they're not coming across as a team that like still thinks they have fight in them. Right. And this game, and then the comments afterwards are just indicative of a team that like has basically just called it quits on a very weird season and a very frustrating season. And this, judging by how the rest of the season has gone, it's almost like, how else could this couldn't have gone any other way, right? Like what were we expecting? I know the expectations were high, but again, you can hear it in my voice. Game 3 was so disappointing on so many levels, emotionally, tactically, like really just about everything. It was a kind of an F. And when that's the case, it's just really hard to find any hope in it.
Yeah, and we're going to get into some of the things that we wanted to talk about adjustment-wise, an argument that you and I had on the couch around how deep these adjustments should have looked like. But right from the top, which is what we've been saying coming into this series, what you say about the entire season, when you have, let's go with Kevin Durant as the aperitif to this, when you have a player that plays 46 minutes, a superstar that plays 46 minutes and takes 11 shots in the game in a must-win, it's as unacceptable as you could possibly have a performance be. We jokingly, as we moved into the laugh so you don't cry, he had a series high, 8 assists in this game. Like, okay, great, 16 points. Like, we'll talk about the role players too, but I never thought that you would see Kevin Durant, and we said it after game 1 and then after game 2 and game 3, give this lackluster of a performance. It just feels like he, and then in turn as well, Kyrie Irving, were pretty much indifferent. Like, they were like, yeah, we get it. Like, this is over. This wasn't even really a part of our plan for the season. The playoffs was not the end game once everything got turned into upheaval around James Harden, etc. And maybe we were all just, kind of buying into the smoke and mirrors of it. And they knew, we're going home early. We don't have an interest in these games. It's the only way that I can wrap my brain around what I saw is that Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and the Nets knew coming in, we don't expect to, and are not really going to try to win this first round series.
Yeah, it's like, I'll stop on the effort part. I don't know if it's an effort thing. I think that they, in their heart of hearts, they want to win. It looks like Boston really wants to win a lot more. I think I'm with you on that side of it.
Sure.
And I totally agree with you on the Kevin Durant 46 minutes, 11 shots is just completely and utterly unacceptable, no matter what scheme they're running against them. Again, admittedly, it's been hard. Like, this is where like a lot of people have to take lumps here. The roster is not built in a way that is they're able to get him shots. Like, there's there did not seem to be any tactical movement to like try to free him up. Things that seemed like they ran a couple actions early where I was like, okay, this is the start of something. Like, they're going, they're moving guys weak side to get him. So it was much harder to, run the double. They were able to skip past out of that a few times. It looked like really good possessions. That just kind of went away, right? There was total inability to hunt out bad defenders, like the few bad defenders that are on the Celtics. Like, all these things just, came together to just be this terrible performance. And like I said, if Kevin Durant in a must-win game plays 46 minutes and takes 11 shots, like you've lost. I don't even know another way to put it. It's like so unacceptable to have that be the case from, like, arguably, no one's going to make this argument now, but like the best player in the world. I think, for at least for now, people are probably going to move off that one just a little bit. It's hard not to, but whatever, he's not going to fall too far. I just don't see how this is even like a possibility. He takes the third most shots on the team. Bruce Brown leads the team in shots with 19. Some of that's by design because of the way Boston played him and just kind of wanted him to shoot. But like, what is the expectation here? How can this, it's really begs the question, like, how can this happen? How can it happen? How can I, like, we were sitting there flabbergasted. I made my peace with this, by the way, in the same way maybe these guys did about midway through the third quarter when we were like, it's just, they're not going to win. It was so obvious. It was so obvious. The field, the tone, like the energy, nothing was changing. The adjustments sucked for the most part. Like, yeah. I just don't, it's one constant complaint. I do feel for me, this is like, that was a culmination of the whole season. It's like, of course, I kind of talked myself into some hope here around the chance to maybe move forward as they get these two guys are going to play together. And then you watch this game and you're like, why did I even hold that hope? Like, it was really kind of a perfect culmination to a crappy season.
And I guess maybe it is fair for me also to accept and acknowledge coming into the game, you had certainly, we talked about having the fan, that fan pulsating reaction from games 1 and game 2. We each took our shot on that. And this is, it's still stuck inside of me here that, like, it's just, there's a level of disappointment around, if you're a Brooklyn Nets fan, going back to being a New Jersey Nets fan, this was the culmination, right? Like, and I do wonder if, I'm not gonna get too far afield here. We'll talk about Kyrie Irving in a second, but I do wonder if there are Nets fans who followed this journey all the way through and go back to the Billy King days and how far afield that process got so quickly, and how they absolutely destroyed the stockpile of assets, and you really swung for the fences and you brought in all these players and gave out these big contracts. I know this is not that thing, and yet there is some bit of energy inside of me that's like, oh, remember how now we're in the third year of this process and it's still not working. There's all different reasons why, but it's still not working. So at what point is it just, it's not gonna work, right? And we're not going to get into that kind of off-season stuff in the bigger conversations, but I think I get, because I felt some of that in the pit of my stomach, where Nets fans probably have that resonating with them of like, this is almost what you should have expected. Something's going to go wrong here because we now have multiple season sample sizes around it, to say nothing of Kyrie's performance in this game specifically.
Yeah, look, and like the final pin on that is like, thank God Kevin Durant has signed this multi-year extension. If they hadn't done that, we would be really, this would be a whole other tone to this podcast. Like, at least he's going to be on a team. For as bad as this series has looked for him, you'll take him, 99 days out of 99. Like, it's just, of course, you want him to be on the team. It's more just flabbergasted that he's so good at these performances. And then Kyrie, same thing. Like, 43 minutes, 17 shots, 0 for 7 from 3. Look, you can run bad from the field. I get it. But you can't, basically, we know that you can't have both of these guys have these games. The Nets have no chance. If both of them are going to struggle to score, the Nets have no chance. It's in some ways kind of a miracle they only lost by 6. I know it was really kind of felt like more than 6. And so, I would not say that this game was a 6-point game, like by any means of the imagination. So, but yeah, with these two superstars, if they're just going to like, this is just the expectation. And at some point, the X's and O's can kind of get thrown out. If they're going to if they're going to combine for 32 points while they play basically the whole game, no sane person in the world would think that the Nets have a chance to win. And there's just it's kind of that easy. There are X's and O reasons why it was difficult, but if you, we're at the time of the season now, and for whatever time the Nets have left, where your superstars have to just completely ball out. Everyone's good now. Like every team is good. All the teams left are good. They all have superstars on their teams. Like that's why they're still here. If your guys are not going to show up, you can just pack your bags and go home. There's no reason to even do it. And this game kind of embodied that kind of idea as well.
And it's funny because as we're going to get into the supporting cast and the adjustments that were made or not made in this game, but you look across the court here, and I'll just briefly say, Jason Tatum plays 45 minutes, takes 29 shots. I mean, he gives you that big performance that you want.
He's been great.
Right.
He's been a superstar. He's been a total superstar. And
by the way, though, 39 points from him. But then when you look in behind it and you go, only, 23 points coming in there from Jaylen Brown. Like they didn't have, we mentioned this in game number 2. Well, you had guys that are over 20 points from multiple players all throughout their roster. This essentially was a game where Jason Tatum gave you a superstar level performance, and he's been great all series, very balanced. But there wasn't so many other boxes being checked in behind him that you felt like, yeah, well, if they're going to give you wave after wave like this, it's going to be hard to look at and think you have a chance. Instead, you look at it and go, I don't see a lot of things inside of this box score, even just from that glancing down, and go, oh yeah, well, if you're going to have those types of games from so many players, how could you expect with some struggles from Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving? No, I look at it and go, okay, you let Tatum go off. Everyone else was basically neutral, and you still couldn't get the job done.
Yeah, that's it. And we'll talk about adjustments here in a second, because there are a few specifics I want to talk about in terms of like things I would have done differently for sure, and things that I think that the Nets just have in some ways are not built to do right now based on the current construction of their team, and also just things that they actually have that they just underutilized. And so, which also makes me want me pull out the remaining, 6 pieces of hair that I have in my head. But but like because I think there are a few different things we can look at that we might even see for game 4.
100%. And so, it's going bad when Doug Norrie and Adam Armbrecht are here watching the game in my apartment, and we're actually we're in a conversation, a little bit of an argument, and coming up in a second, we're going to talk about why certain adjustments seem so obvious that Doug and I were actually arguing a layer deeper beyond it. But first, got to tell you about our friends over at Athletic Greens, because they have, of course, a product that I literally, and I mean that sincerely, use every day with AG1 from Athletic Greens. That's because, as you've heard us talk about it before, it's that alternative way to get all of the things that you need to have a healthy body, mind, energy, all the way through your entire day without searching for in a glass of water. You stir it up, you drink it down before you even get anything else going, and you know that you're going to get yourself hit with 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens, again, that are going to help you start your day off the right way. It's things that are going to give you that edge with your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, your recovery, your focus, and even help you battle against that evil scepter, aging. And of course, when you think about AG1 from Athletic Greens, they want to make it easy for everyone to enjoy it. And that's why Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of the immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NBA network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NBA network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right. So then on the other side of it, as we say, the in-game adjustments, you and I, listen, Doug and I don't argue. We love each other. That's all there is to it. We'll come out the other side of this series, the better for it. But we were talking about that. The obvious adjustment coming out of the break was going to be, you got to start Nicholas Claxton. You got to run him as long as you can. Drummond is failing. This is not working. We got into then, like, what do you do after that? But unfortunately, it didn't even matter, because the Nets, Steve Nash, did not do that. He did not accomplish the thing that seems universally true from everyone watching it. Claxton is the guy that's having success here. Just run him until he's ragged. He finishes with 21 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to really quick clarify this. Like, the reason they lost is because Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving just failed to score. Let's start there. That's very obvious. After that, though, if you can't even after that put your best foot forward in terms of like
tactical advantages, then you have zero chance. And that was, and this was so indicative of this Drummond thing. He has been completely horrendous in the series. Horrendous. There's no stat that you can look at that like helps. He's minus 22 in 55 minutes, right? The few minutes that he's been able to play on the court, or like they've put him out there, he's completely stunk. He's not made for this matchup at all. They picked on him the entire time. It like sort of summed up by that weird lob that they threw him that he tried to back pass to Seth Curry that looked like something out of like a circus. It didn't make no sense. Anyway, it's been horrible. And at halftime, Claxton had that for the series was like a +2. Again, plus minus is not the best thing. Although I will say in playoff series, when you're seeing the same stuff happen over and over again, like you can get a feel for what is happening and what is not happening. It's so obvious that he should not be playing. When I almost had to leave. When he came out in the second half and started, I'm like, well, what do you expect is going to happen? He's been brutalized. And of course, he goes out there. It's basically bad. He's like a -1 for his 6 minutes. He gets out of there, never returns. Claxton plays 21 total minutes. He's been basically, I think he's +2 for the series or something like that. He only plays 21 minutes. My point being, this was such a good example of the lack of A, urgency, B, like identifying what is actually can work. You have to make changes. If it's in a playoff series, if you do not make changes, you will lose. A good example of this, go over the Grizzlies Minnesota series. Steven Adams, this is not the series for him. Like with Karl-Anthony Towns, they can't play Steven Adams. Steven Adams started like every game for the Grizzlies this year. Game 2, Steven Adams gone. You're not playing anymore. The series doesn't work for you. You're a veteran. It doesn't matter. You have to sit down. Memphis has a better tactical advantage, and they make a move. So if you just want to look at another team that made a very similar move because it was going to increase their odds of being able to win because of advantages, to not be able to do these things is criminal. I just don't. There's no other way to put it. It's just bad coaching. That's it. Unless I'm missing something, which I do not think I am. Like there's no one thinks that Drummond's been good for this series. It was just as perfect. There's other things too, but that is such a perfect example of the unwillingness to even reverse course midstream. If you can't do that either, like you're also not going to win. You have to be able to make a tactical changes. If you can't do it, like you have no chance.
And by the way, so I looked over on Stat Muse. -2 is Nicholas Claxton for the 3 games by the time he finished. Now, to clarify, because that doesn't make it a bad thing.
Sorry, -2 in 73 minutes. I had it right in front of me. I don't know why I said the wrong thing.
But Andre Drummond is -22. Yeah. Okay, like this is what we're talking about. Like some things are
you don't
so
even,
obvious.
Sorry, you don't even need the stats. You don't need the stats.
The eye test just tells you, right? And this is where, not that I push against, I haven't pushed against it for any other reason than to what you said at the start of this segment. The Stars need to be scoring more. You're going to lose these games. When you talk about adjustments, it's like, well, listen, if your Stars aren't going to score, no amount of adjustments are necessarily going to matter. And also, this is as glaring of an adjustment to make, and for it not to be done and to go with Blake Griffin, which I know we all, my father, the hero, Blake Griffin comes in for some magical moments and also finishes negative and doesn't really have the impact that visually you might think it does. It was incredibly, it's not even frustrating. It was affirmation that like this team, organizationally, again, this is what I said at the top. It feels like the team collectively said, who cares? We're not going to win this game. We're not going to win this series. Otherwise, we might make some of the adjustments that you think you'd like to see to give ourselves an opportunity in the second half of this game. Instead, they don't. They kind of run out with standard operating procedures, and they end up losing the game at a margin that might as well have been double digits and by significant numbers, as opposed to the way it ends up playing itself out. And the other piece that I'll point to here, and you can follow up with it if you want, but we said this after game number 2 as well. When you look at the box score for the Brooklyn Nets and you say, again, one of the things I talked about coming into the series was lean into the facilitation factor when you're Kyrie Irving, when you're Kevin Durant, because that can certainly help move the needle here. But going collectively for 17 assists in this game, while each only giving you 16 points apiece, like I'm talking about going for 8 or 9 assists and also giving you 25 points a game from each of your superstars. You had 26 points from Bruce Brown, and that can be a byproduct of what the defense is doing against you. But you got 10 points. That's low level from Seth Curry. You also got 13 from Claxton. You also got a surprising 12 points from Patty Mills, right? In spite of the fact of what we said about what his limitations were going to be in this season. He was a +4 in the game. Like you checked again, another game where you checked boxes outside of your superstars, and the combination of their lackadaisical performances with an inability to make any adjustments that seemed very obvious led to a game, no matter what the score was, never felt like Brooklyn was going to win that.
Yeah, it was just, and look, that's not the only thing either. Like, and those guys are gonna, the way that Boston's playing defense, those guys are going to need to just have more assists because the shots are all harder. So that was probably always going to happen a little bit.
Yep.
Other little things. We're gonna get more into this. We're gonna talk a little bit about Game 4 because Game 4 is around the corner here too. Like, we're not gonna be able to dive into all this stuff, I don't think, on this podcast because it's just gonna go way over. But other little things that were just problems for the team. The inability to hunt out Peyton Pritchard on defense was maddening.
Oh God, that was upsetting for Doug.
To have
as it should be, but you almost lost your cool on the sofa.
Well, to have it double dip on you where you don't take advantage of him and he completely murders you on offense, like is just again inexcusable. Look, some guys are gonna catch fire. I can't go crazy. His looks were fine. He hit a couple really big ones, which I thought the defense was fine. The inability, Kyrie got him once on a switch, cooked him. That was the end of that. They never tried again. For as far as I could tell, like the inability to do things like that. They really were desperate, I think, for another ball handler, frankly, like a James Harden, to be able to reset the offense a lot and be able to find these things. KD and Kyrie are just not necessarily greatly adept at doing this. And so it's just harder to get into the switches that they want and the mismatches. This is why it always looks hard on defense.
Right? Dragic only played 9 minutes in this game, by the way.
I don't even know if Dragic is the guy. This guy,
I know, but I'm just saying.
The person I'm referring to might not even be on the roster. So like this is more of a organizational, the way it's put together. Like the way the roster is put together is like they really these two guys, for as great as they are, really benefit from having a third guy that can manipulate sort of the defense a little bit to get them into these advantageous situations. Again, this is why it always looks hard for them in the series because they're not hunting those out. And then they're getting, again, the worst of all worlds where they're getting double teamed. It's too easy for them to bring doubles. Like they're just getting Grant Williams still is on KD, Tatum still on KD. I know there's not a lot of outs with this Boston team. So this is all to say that when you combine the performance, which was bad, and give yourself no other advantages you don't take advantage of anything else. That's bad coaching. Last thing too, one other lineup that we had said, I know I'm going crazy here, but one other lineup we had said you have to be able to probably willing to try when you're down is the KD at the 5 lineup and just live with whatever happens. Like, yes, you are going to be murdered on defense, but when you're already losing, they actually finally did that with about 3.5 minutes left and staged a little bit of a comeback in that time because that lineup of Mills, Curry, Brown, KD, and Kyrie, like that will be really problematic for opposing defenses just because there's so much shooting. Maybe just go to that like at the 6-minute mark or something. Like you have to do something. I guess my point is it all has to do nothing. It's like that scene in Forgetting Sarah Marshall where he's learning to surf and he's like, do less. Like do less. Well, now you're doing nothing. Right?
I do more than that.
Like that's just kind of what I felt like watching this game.
Yeah, 100%. Every game of this series has given a new wrinkle to it. And just to your point about the going with KD at the 5, there's a world where if you utilize that earlier in the game, like when it is still hanging in the balance, you can at least put pressure on Boston to have to be successful on both ends of the floor with consistency. We know the Nets have been able to build leads and then protect them and or slowly see them dwindle over the course of a third or fourth quarter. And that's one of the differences too in this series when you never have those big opportunities to protect a lead and lean into the things that you do well on this team. That makes it hard to find yourself in the fourth quarter trying to do everything that is anti what this roster is built around is probably is the way that I would phrase it. So yeah, it was good stuff, really frustrating. And I honestly, man, and you're hearing our voices and we are going to, I won't say I'm circling the drain on the idea of the off-season conversations we're going to have are going to be interesting because there's plenty here and we'll probably get more from game 4 that leads to a lot of questions for this team.
Well, after this, I'll tell you why the Nets have already called it quits in the season. Like it's already obvious. And it's not even from this game. There's something that happened earlier in the day that it was a complete and utter signal that the Nets have also just raised the white flag, which I'll tell you about in a minute. Before we're going to get to that, I'll tell you about our friends over at Built Bar. It's that time of year we've been talking to you. We're 6 months or 5 months, almost 5 months into this. Now, 4 months? I can't even count. 4 monthts into this year. And that's why this New Year's resolutions can start. God,
you need to Built Bar.
Yeah, I need a Built Bar. I gotta go grab one now. Got to protein up. Built Bar is the protein bar that can help you stick to those New Year's resolutions. Make sure you're staying healthy this time of year. You can reach for it better than a candy bar, better than some other snack food that you might reach for that just has nothing going for it in the health department. Built Bar has you covered over there. They started with the flavors, the mint brownie, coconut almond, white chocolate cookies, and cream. They sound like candy bars, but they get the stats that can read like that best protein bar on the market. 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, just 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein. Built Bar is all about the taste with the stats to back it up. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off of your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com.
And my friends, I am legitimately excited to tell you about Brooklyn Burrow because they are a local company in Brooklyn that you, the Brooklyn Nets fans, can benefit from here. Potentially, we'll see how high your hopes should rise here. But they, of course, want to help celebrate that the Brooklyn Nets are in the playoffs, and they want to give away a free burrito for any Nets fan that attends their home game and comes out on the winning side of it. You show up the next day, you go ahead and have proof that you were at that game, and they're going to hook you up with a free burrito. They're a pro Nets burrito shop in Brooklyn, as I said, and they've been around for all of it, going all the way back to the days of Lopez and Williams and Uncle Joe Johnson as they lost to the Bulls in 7. After hundreds of pop-ups across Brooklyn, they finally have their brick and mortar at 922 Fulton Street, just one stop away from the Barclays, and they've come a long way, much like the Brooklyn Nets have to this point of their franchise. Their burritos are San Francisco, which, by the way, if you're not aware, burrito capital of the world. That's the style that they're cooking them up in. When you bite into one of these amazing burritos, you'll be transported to the 20th and Mission of San Francisco, where food is good and it needs to be delicious on both coasts. That's why Brooklyn Burrow is here for you. Along with awesome original San Francisco Mission District burritos, Brooklyn Burrow is also bringing tacos, quesadillas, nachos, and bowls all there for you. It's all fresh with avocado, not that clumped up watery guacamole. This is fresh stuff, my friends. So you're going to want to get over there. Sour cream and everything else that comes on top, like Monterey Jack cheese. My God, I wish I had a, dang it, man. I wish I had a bowl right now. We could and would and will like to be the conduit for helping folks in Brooklyn feel like the same passion that they have for eating and sharing the original San Francisco Mission District food is possible, and you can have it, and it can be free if Brooklyn pulls out this game for victory. Well, I hope I get a burrito, Doug, because game 4, as we dive back into it here, we talk about the plans for it. There's a couple of things I want to touch on here. Like you said, we'll rehash this series in a lot of ways and talk about takeaways. But post game, first off, before we get into the Ben Simmons update that came out relatively quickly after this game, Kyrie Irving, to paraphrase, in the post game basically said, "Yeah, it's just unfortunate that we didn't have time to develop continuity and gel as a team." And there was some other verbiage in and around it, but my general sentiment was, boy, you'd be really better off not saying anything at all that makes it come across like you don't feel you are remotely a component of what has been a very up and down, weird, wacky season. There's a million elements that went into it. We all know it. But there's this sense of, dang, it just kind of happens that way, friends? And I did see an interesting stat watching the NBA games today at halftime. Kyrie Irving has played 60 games or less in 7 of his 11 NBA seasons. This is a guy that misses time. And this is just such a frustrating little microcosm thing of being like, dude, you could just say, this sucks. Next question. Yep. Instead, it was like an explanation that nobody wants to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
not killing them, but I know.
I try not to dig on guys too much following the post game because no one wants to answer these questions, and it's obviously an emotional and they're exhausted and like whatever. Yep. I will say that the Nets just messaging in general stinks. There's no other way to put it. It's obvious. It's not just our opinion. This is a content-wide opinion from just about anyone that talks about the Nets or writes or covers the team. The Nets are one of the worst, at least for this season, have been one of the worst messaging teams in the NBA in like a long time. It's been horrible. The injury reporting is horrible. The messages you get from the front office, from different reporters is horrible. It's all over the place. And then Kyrie's comments, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of giddy up and go here. And so maybe that's more of the frustration. It's just that there's just not a lot of, doesn't seem like a team with a lot of fight. I understand conceptually what he's saying, but it doesn't move me at all. And at this point, at this point of the season, I do kind of throw my hands up at stuff like that and say, hey, like, I just don't get the point of saying it, but maybe I'm just kind of over, here and stuff like that at this point. So that's where I'm like,
Yeah.
let's get into Ben Simmons.
Yeah. Why don't you brighten up the day? This will be good too.
Well, this is where we close on, and this couldn't be any more perfect. So it comes out in the middle. It had been reported that he was going to play game 4. It was going to play in stretches, and then start to hear sort of like midway through the day that might be in doubt. And then Woj reports sometime in the afternoon on Sunday that he's going to be out with back soreness, that he woke up in the morning on Sunday, reported to the team that he was experiencing back soreness and was not going to play in the game. So he's out too. What were your thoughts when you heard this one? Because I mean, I have my thoughts, but when you hear Ben Simmons is not going to play right now, I probably have a couple different minds about this, but what did you think when you heard it?
Well, one, Brooklyn's done. They're making the vacation plans, right? Wrap it up. No reason to push them back. The other thing is, I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast or you and I were discussing it on the old sofa here, Freud style. Why not play? And now, if the back flared up and this is what happens, it just makes me question everything about the reporting of this stuff. And it's why we didn't spend a lot of time of it over the last 2+ months around, oh, he's ramping up. It's going to be this. It looks like that. Guess what? This could have been the reality, that this is what happens when you're trying to come back and you're having issues with this. When everyone is talking about it being just this foregone conclusion that he's going to step out onto the court and then he doesn't, everything about it either reeks of people didn't really know for sure, or this is a guy that doesn't necessarily want to step out onto the court this season anyway. And there could have been a bit of a forcing of a narrative from the Brooklyn Nets side of things. And this going down 0-3 was the easy point for Ben Simmons to kind of say, hey, I don't need another excuse other than this. My back doesn't feel so good. I'm not going out there for game 4.
Yeah, for sure. Look, the Nets have lost all benefit of the doubt when it comes to reporting injuries. That's not a hot take. That's just also the truth. Everyone would agree with me on this one. So when you just don't give the truth, or the different truths come from different people all the time, and you have a coach that never seems to know anything that's going on in the organization, like at least when his quotes are like, when he's just never has a clue of, Harden's going to get traded, and then Harden gets traded. It doesn't seem to even know if Simmons, what he says, like if Simmons is playing or practicing. He clearly knows. They just never tell you anything. And so, and then to have this come out where, I think the team kind of threw him under the bus a little bit here, because the way it was reported was that, hey, he came and said to us that he doesn't want to play, and so we're not going to do it. If you read the verbiage around it, that's the way I kind of read it, at least. That the
sold
team
some tickets though, huh? By making it seem like this guy could play.
That's another thing that people kind of threw out there as an idea around this. And so, yeah. And then the way it was framed from the team, it didn't seem like they were all that happy about it. Again, who can tell? I will tell you the one funny thing about this, in addition to Kyrie's kind of comments, I thought it was hilarious in a sad way. Hilarious that it was reported that he's going to be out game 4. Unlike the other reporting where it's like, hey, he's not going to sit game 3, but he's going to sit game 4. No one said, hey, he's going to sit out game 4. We'll see about game 5. I'm like, that's an interesting omission. One that probably was not thought about ahead of time, but sometimes the thing you don't say can be the thing that screams loudest in the room. That there's no, and maybe it's just an omission, but when you don't even mention game 5, it's because you've lost. In your head, you've lost also. Yeah. Like no one from the Nets, no way it was reported. I didn't see a single place that said out game 4. We'll see about game 5.
Sure.
Which is what you would say if you thought you were going to win or believed at all in what the mission here is. No one does. It's okay. The season's over. I get it. You're down 3-0. It's an impossible task. But even like that little bit of not mentioning that, I just thought, right. Why should the rest of us even care? Like, why even bother? Because they don't think they're going to game 5 because they didn't even mention it. And that was the perfect time to do it.
I would love to see Nicholas Claxton out there for game 4. I'd love to see Cam Thomas. I'd love to see Kessler Edwards. I'd love to see Day'Ron Sharp. And then you can kind of pick your poison about what veteran. Maybe Goran Dragic. That's what I'd like to see, because if this is this is the messaging. If it doesn't matter and it's already over anyway, go ahead and reward the kids for having a heck of a rookie season, because it's over. I mean, the series is over anyway. Nobody comes back from 0-3, and I get that. But like with everything that went on in this series and the culmination of the season, at least reward the youngsters for giving a heck of an effort over the course of the year, because it doesn't matter. We've already proven over 3 games the superstars either don't care, can't do it, the adjustments can't get made. Like, why not have some fun going out the door here? Because it doesn't look like it's really going to matter. But don't worry, guys. We're still going to watch.
Oh yeah, we'll watch. I'll just be mad. I'm gonna watch just so I can get mad when Drummond starts. I'll tell you that right now. Look,
That's
we're
my
gonna
point,
watch,
though, right?
obviously,
You're going to go. No, I know, but you're going to go to Game 4, and exactly to your point. Like, I mean, I'm being facetious, playing the rookies, whatever. But you're going to go to Game 4, and you're going to see Drummond step out on the court. Like, what are we talking about? Like, the ship is sinking, and it's almost like, you know what, everybody, start drinking water. We're not trying to bail the water out of the ship. We're actually trying to get more buoyant. Maybe we'll end up floating to the top. Like, it's just such a disaster. I'm completely in the fan frustration bag right now, as everyone should be able to realize.
I think it's fine. I think there's so many, factors that have come together here that make it very easy to go to that spot, right? Like it's not just and again, this is why we should kind of focus on a few different things here. It's not just the performances, it's everything. It's the top to bottom. It's the whole season. The whole season has been like this. Sometimes each individual thing in a vacuum does not look like that bad, right? Okay, and it's from the very beginning. Or it can all be explained, right? Everything along the way this season could be explained. And if you didn't have the context of the whole thing, it'd be hard to dig the Nets too bad on what happened, right? But when you put it all together into one tapestry of what the season looked like, it's just such a mess. It's such a mess. And this series really exemplified it. And
Perfect
really
solution.
on every single level, from like the way the plays, the messaging, the injury stuff, the lack of adjustments, everything. It was really a microcosm for the whole season. All right, we'll be back with you after Game 5. This is a dark one, man. We'll be back after Game 4 to discuss how the series either ended or continued to have a little life. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe over on YouTube. Thanks for everyone, by the way, that jumped into that live YouTube broadcast the other day. We just had a ton of people in there pregame. I don't know if we're going to get to be able to do that before Game 4, but really appreciate everyone that jumped in and asked questions. Make sure you like and subscribe over on YouTube, Locked On Nets.
And hey, in the same vein, you really don't want to hear the explanations or justifications in the post-game press conference from some of the superstars. Guess what? I was going to listen to your CD, but then I just went on living my life. Aldous Snow.
Oh, one of the all-time great poets. We'll be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.